Welcome. Hello. How's your day going? This is Concession Impressions, a weekly podcast about two friends who go watch a movie and then post-movie talk about their initial impressions of that movie that they just watched. Wow, that's a
excellent summary.
Yeah, I try to use as many words as possible to describe this very simple thing we're doing. So
that's the secret.
Just keep talking, fake it until you can make some kind of sentence out of it. Anyways, so today's episode is 3,000 Years of Longing.
That is the correct title. George Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing.
Wait, George Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing?
I mean, it's not called George Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing. It's called 3,000 Years of Longing.
Okay. Today's episode is 3,000 Years of Longing. We just watched it, and here is our initial impression. I don't know, yeah. I will say that I imagined it to be more bumpy because, the trailer is so bassy.
Yeah, so the song, I was waiting for the song in the trailer to come on because I really like that song.
It gives the movie, this really trippy, kind of crazy feeling.
Right.
The movie was, kind of felt not like that at all.
No. The movie is so the trailer's giving you the impression that it's like a magical fantasy thriller. I don't know why, every trailer tries to be a fucking thriller. And I guess what they've realized is that if people think a movie is a thriller, they are more likely to go see it, is what is really happening. But it's such a mistake. Because when they get to the fucking theater and they see it's not a thriller, every week after that is going to be there's going to be fewer and fewer people going and seeing the movie. So there's no point in doing that. That's a bad idea. It's false, bad advertising. But in reality, this movie is a romance, a fantasy romance, and a sort of surrealist epic in the vein of something like The Fall.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It definitely is completely different from the trailer.
Very much so.
I was kind of like, oh man, my heart's going to be pounding in the theater because of all this bass that's going to be happening, and it's going to just be a wild ride. Kind of hearkening back to his previous film, Mad Max Fury Road, which is probably his last film, right?
I think that's why they also made the decision to sell it as if it was going to be like Mad Max Fury Road. And I think that's why so many reviewers didn't like it, is because they were expecting this to be Mad Max George Miller, which is one of the sides of George Miller.
Babe, Happy Feet.
This is more the Babe side of George Miller. Happy Feet George Miller, only rated R. and Witches of Eastwick George Miller. It's the George Miller that's a romantic and a storyteller.
Yeah, I think it really leans on that. Would you go see it? Spoil-free review. Chase, what do you say?
I think if you are expecting a Mad Max style thriller movie, probably not your cup of tea. If you are somebody who is interested in a romance and very interesting creative visuals and that side of George Miller, I think it's worth seeing.
Yeah, I think I disagree.
Okay.
I kind of would pass this one. Which is kind of sad because, it has a lot of star power and a lot of kind of big moving parts here that could possibly make for a really big and important film.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt that it kind of missed the mark a little bit, and I don't think it was worth seeing, in my opinion. I mean, I think people should just support films in general, but I think that for most people, if you're out in the movie theater and you have a few choices, put this at the bottom of the list. Don't rush to go see this one.
The very bottom.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I don't even know what else is out there. I mean, I think I think it's okay to skip this week, not
definitely.
Go to the movie theater, wait a few weeks until some other movie comes out and go see that instead.
I think you have to be a particular type of person to see this movie and enjoy it. Somebody like
who's lonely and depressed.
Lonely and depressed and very into visuals.
And Idris Elba.
Yeah.
If you're into Idris Elba,
Also
you'll
Tilda
enjoy
Swinton,
this.
but Tilda Swinton, she kind of does nothing in this.
Yeah, I didn't really like her in this film, actually, to be honest with you.
I think she's weirdly the weakest part of this film, and we'll get into that more in the detailed section, but
well, I mean, let's just jump into it.
Unusual for her.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should just jump into it. So that's our initial review is you said it depends on who you are, but you recommend it.
And it might be worth it.
Yeah, and I'm saying for the majority of you, probably just kind of skip it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with you. I don't think this is going to be for most people. I think this is going to be, hardcore George Miller fans and people who are really into visuals. Like, I think this movie has quite a lot of great visual spectacle and great visual design and storytelling. I think it's lacking in a lot of other areas.
Yeah, I agree. So without further ado, let's just jump into the spoiler. Get ready, because we're going to spoil it. All right, so spoil review impressions of this film. And I think you kind of just mentioned it a minute ago, that in this film, it's kind of like it's a spectacle to watch. It's really, I think that was the best thing about it. I think I mentioned this to you before. I'm not a big fan of George Miller. Mm-hmm. The only film that I've watched of his that I actually liked was Babe. However, I think he only did Babe 2, right? I think wasn't Babe 1 someone else?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm not sure if he worked on both of them or if maybe he directed the second one, but worked on the first one doing something else. I liked Babe. Mm-hmm. That adorable little pig that talks. It's a cute story. It's a fun story. I watched it all the time as a kid. Everything else, I wasn't a big fan of, especially the newest Mad Max, which I think is a lot of people really enjoyed of his.
It's a lot of people's favorite film, which I don't personally get. Like, I think it's the reason it's a lot of people's favorite film is you literally don't have to think while you're watching it. That's just a hard diss to a lot of people.
So, can I actually tell you a story of when I watched that film, which is his last film? So yes. It's kind of,
just before that, I want to be clear. I like Mad Max Fury Road. I think it's a really well-made, really well-directed film. I just don't know why it's a lot of people's favorite film. Anyway, continue.
I think that I wasn't a big fan of it. I think it was really cool in terms of, like, all the practical effects and, like, all these stunts and everything, like, looked really nice. But I will tell you this, I actually didn't even finish the film. I turned it off. To give you more to this story, during this time, I was in a motorcycle accident. I couldn't walk for 4 months, and I was literally stuck in bed, and the only thing I can do is I pretty much watch movies. I watch like 6 movies a day. I just watch movies every single day for like 4 months straight. And to tell you this, I watched that film. I didn't even want to finish it. I had only one thing that I was doing, and it's just watching films, and I still didn't want to finish that film. So I think they would have, if I was in the same situation when it was with this film, I probably would have also not finished this film. Yeah. Which, is maybe, I don't know. I think that they're very similar in terms of, even though the story and everything is different, I think I feel the same way about this film, which is that there's a lot of really cool visuals in the film, especially like when you see through the Jin's eyes and like all these like crazy outer worldly kind of like mystical effects and different, like, I don't know how to even describe it, just like these crazy trippy things that where they go through different worlds of the Jinn world and the human world, and the human world through the lens of the Jinn. And those of you who don't know or don't want to watch it, Jinns are genies. Think of Aladdin.
Genie is a bastardization of the original word, which I think is Jinn. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know.
I was like, wait, which word is
Genie?
Yeah, Genie is yeah. Okay.
It's Americanified. I don't know if it's even Americanified or Westernified or what it is, but it's I think the original word is Jinn.
Gotcha. Okay. So now, I think it was beautiful. There's a lot of really cool things that I liked to see, but I think other than that, and I think the second half of the film, so let me just go back a second, go back 3,000 years to the beginning of this longing. The story is about Idris Elba, who is a Jinn, and he gets discovered by Tilda Swinton's character, who finds his bottle, opens it up, and gets 3 wishes. But she's more cautious and smarter, and she is curious like what happened in his past, and then he goes through the first half of the film talking about all of the times where he was brought out of the bottle. The second half of the film is pretty much them almost kind of like falling in love and her 3 wishes.
Right, which is definitely the weaker part.
Yeah, after the past stories, like his past life, his last 3,000 years, I kind of lost interest in the film.
I think that happened. That seems to be the what's happening to a lot of people as well. I agree that that's where it kind of dies. I do think that the reason it dies is because we don't know anything about Tilda Swinton's character. Like,
they
we know a little bit.
Like, I think they hinted at, like, she tried to have a baby, but she couldn't, or
well, she had a miscarriage.
Miscarriage. Yeah, okay, that's what I was.
And her first husband left her. We know a little bit, but
wait, was it left her or cheated on her? I think
it was left her.
Uh-huh.
Possible. I don't know. We don't know.
Again,
exactly
they don't really talk about it as much.
Yeah.
Everything about her, like he goes through his past in great detail about all of what he was feeling and every single person he interacted with, but you only get to know her character through like a mystery.
A very short flashback. 2 very short flashbacks. Her as a very young child at a boarding school, where we learn that she's always been a loner, but intelligent and very interested in stories, and had like an imaginary friend that she created.
Yeah.
Although that might have actually been real. As we learn through the story, there are certain people who have magical blood, specifically djinn blood, we see a couple of examples of, who can in fact see magical creatures or realize that they are there. And so I think the story is trying to hint that she also has this.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's like a lot of interesting little ideas there. Mm-hmm. Like, it's really cool, like, does she have powers? Or, like, I don't know, also, like, a lot of the past stories of his life, and, you know, like, there's so many interesting little ideas that they kind of sprinkle in there, but they never really go into it. They kind of focus on, I feel like, a less interesting story than other things that they kind of imply but don't 100%. Really like go into.
What I keep thinking is this would have been a much better story if we had much more equal time between Tilda Swinton's character and the djinn's character going into their backstories and also their daily lives. But some of that was clearly a factor because this was a COVID film, so they spend most of the film in one room.
Yeah,
well,
I think
that's not really true. Like, the characters spend Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba spend most of the film in one room, but we go to a bunch of different places.
But it also felt like, honestly, that's another thing, which is the VFX in this film felt a little janky to me, especially with Idris Elba and it felt like half the film was Idris Elba on a green screen. Because even with him, like, he's like, oh yeah, I went to Sweden and I saw the collider, the hydrogen collider, is that what it's called? Mm-hmm. And he was like, it looked like, oh, I'm on a green screen. Oh, look, the green screen changed and I'm in Sweden. Oh, the green screen changed and I'm in a hospital now. It's like, I don't know, it just felt like kind of weird. And also, even when he first appears in the like hotel room, I think it's maybe the blur on him versus,
they had like a weird wispy thing because they talk about how he's made of particles and he's like electromagnetic energy brought to life, basically.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, but then I think the weird thing was that he's like this big thing and she's in the front of the camera. She's like she's in focus in the front.
Right.
And he's out of focus, but he's so big that his legs kind of come up to her.
Right.
But he is still equally blurry throughout his entire body, that it just felt like, oh, she's either just like green screened into a room, like they filmed it twice, like maybe they built like a little miniature set that Idris Elba just like laid in,
right,
and they just filmed his stuff and then they filmed her on a green screen and they just kind of like composited it together. But it just felt like it was composited together, and I think a lot of times it felt like that, and I think it may be because of that reason that it is during COVID and there's even a lot of scenes where people are wearing masks and different things like that, where I'm like, okay, I guess it makes sense that they couldn't just flying around to all these different locations, so they just kind of built it on a stage and they kind of just use green screens.
Yeah, and I think it suffers a lot from that. But I also think really like big criminal problem with this, for me at least, is that we don't spend enough time with Althea, which is Tilda Swinton's character. And I wonder if this would have been significantly better as a sort of anthology series, maybe like a short mini series of days spent with the djinn, so we could live her life a little bit,
yeah,
and see what her actual desires are.
Or like I was thinking when I was watching it, like I wish they broke it down where he tells his story over a course of months.
Yes,
where like you see them doing stuff together, and then over time as their relationship deepens, they kind of share more bits of information about their past lives, and then they get to a point where like they fall in love, or I guess where
that would have been more natural instead of just kind of a third act. Like
the whole first wish
shift.
though didn't make sense. She's like, I wish for you to love me. I'm like, I was kind of thinking like,
it felt a little weird.
I was like, this guy just told you how he fell in love with a bunch of people, and because of he was in love, his wishes got the better of him, and you're just like, I want you to love me, I wish for you to love me. Like I don't get why she said that.
Well, so I think they could have written that line better, because the way they did it is she says, I wish for you to love me, and then she goes on to clarify, I wish to be one of your great love stories, which makes a lot more sense for her character. She wants to be someone fabled,
okay,
like the ones she's read and been told about by the djinn. And
but
I still think it's a little,
I don't know. I do. Yeah, I don't. I still. I mean, I agree with you agreeing with me that I think it doesn't make sense. Also, I just think that it doesn't make sense at a certain point. The last story of the djinn, his past, which was like 200 years ago or something like that, and the whole thing is like, oh, the person never makes the third wish, or maybe they just weren't clear enough about the rules.
Well, they do. That's one of the things that I didn't particularly like, is that they do make a third wish. It's just the third wish was to be locked in the bottle, so I guess it canceled out the third wish rule freeing him,
which was like, I don't know. And
or
also
she
like
wishes to never have met him, but that doesn't seem to be like.
So then it's like, then everything would, I don't know. The powers don't make sense either, because then like she also wishes, oh, I wish I had all the knowledge, and I was like, oh, maybe she's just gonna go insane with all the knowledge, just obtaining all the knowledge in the world in one moment, and then he's just like, okay, and then he pulls out a book and just like, I'm gonna teach you math now. Right. It's like, wait, what? Like you're a genie and you're just like pulling out books?
Yeah, it wasn't an instant like brain
but then
overload.
Other times there is, like when she's like, oh, I wish I never met you, it's an instant. He's like, oh, that wish happened in an instant, and everything, all our encounters just went away.
I think some of that might be George Miller playing with visuals and also moving the story along, because the I wish I had never met you, that is kind of an instantaneous thing, right? Versus like knowledge. Like, I guess you could just snap it, but there's a more visually interesting way. But
wait, hold on. You could have made that so interesting. You know, like, oh, I wish I had all the knowledge in the universe, and then boom, you just like her mind not literally explodes, but you like information, and then her
like her second wish, where she wishes that she
where
she could dream like the djinn, basically.
Yeah, and then it goes out and you see like all of the letters and the words, and they're intertwingling and starting to form like formulas, and like that was a really cool scene. Like, I think the first wish, or I don't even know what wish I'm talking about now, but I think it just didn't make sense. Yeah, the first wish should have been like that, where like she just got all that information. And I think I was also curious, like that's also like a really big thing where it's like, oh, she has all the information now, so she's kind of just like disappointed in the world. And again, I'm always like thinking like, oh, this would have been a really cool thing to see, like her slowly go insane because she knows so much that she's like, oh, like life is pointless, or something like there's some kind of take on it. And again, later on,
especially in her specific condition, being a
like
third wife of an elderly man,
locked
trapped
in
a room.
in a tower, pretty much, like Rapunzel. And then like later on, when was this? I think it was like when they start living together, the Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba's characters.
Yeah.
Or possibly once after she, I think it's after she makes her first wish. There's that like trippy scene where the hotel turns into like lifts out of the world and kind of is in like a space where like you go through the kitchen door and you're like in a galaxy and stuff like that. That was a cool scene, and I was like thinking like, oh, are they gonna like play on some kind of she's starting to like fall into another dimension, or like she's starting to get intertwined with like a being that's too strong for humankind or something like that, and like the world is starting to like collapse around her or like fail her mind. And especially like in the beginning of the film, which I watched, and where she like passes out because of the whole entire thing, you know, overwhelms her.
Right.
I felt like, oh, maybe it'll be interesting of like this, her wishes are slowly kind of destroying her. Wanting to be close with this power,
mighty, powerful
this
being.
all-powerful being is slowly what's corrupting
That could have been interesting too.
Her mind.
I don't know. I think it was just another excuse for George Miller to like do something visually spectacular.
I mean, I think that's
kind of like a magician.
The whole film is kind of just like him, just kind of, all right, I'm just going to do this for no reason other than just to make it look kind of interesting.
Which I think is kind of a George Miller thing. Like even in Mad Max, there are like those scenes with like the stilt walker people that have no real bearing on the story, but they are visually interesting and a reference to like Dali and different things like that. But
yeah, and I just want to say that going back to the earlier conversation we had about, is this going to win any Oscars, or is this going to win Best Picture or something like that?
Definitely not.
I don't think it will win that.
I'm not sure it'll win in any category.
I can maybe see it winning some kind of like, I don't think Best VFX, but like maybe cinematography or something like that. Like
there are better films this year.
There are better films, but I will not be
nominated.
Or yes, either nominated or I'm like, oh, I can't believe if it wins. I'll be like, I can't believe that won. But like
Mad Max won like all the technical awards.
I can see special groups of people who would really love this film, and then the rest of the world is going to be kind of against this film. So yeah,
I don't think anybody is going to leave this movie thinking it's like their favorite film. I think there will be some people, maybe like me, who don't hate it as much as everyone else because I kind of felt like the trailer was lying to us. And also, I'm a huge fan of Scheherazad's 1001 Arabian Nights, and this is basically that, only flipped on its head. Or it's not that, but it is very reminiscent of that. And so I was like very into the concept of it all, and then I very much appreciate the visuals of George Miller, and I think he's a great visualist. Kind of like how I feel about Zack Snyder, is he's a great visualist, but not always great on the storytelling. Like, I think the storytelling sometimes is pretty weak. And that's where, like, I think Mad Max really shines for me, is that it creates such a simple story that all he has to do is focus on visuals and focus on world building. And it's great. And that's kind of Zack Snyder's thing, too. Like, with 300, works in the very similar way, where it's just such a simple story ultimately that all he has to do is focus on like visuals and world building and crafting an interesting thing to look at for a couple hours.
Yeah, I think he should stick to that. I think he should stick to stories that are less complicated and just focus on doing visuals.
Well, his next movie is Furiosa, which is like a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road.
Well, so that could be a lot better. I mean, we're probably going to review that in Concession Impressions when that comes out, whatever, like a year or two or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I feel like it's not going to go as well because Furiosa is actually kind of a complex character, I think.
Is it the girl character in the Mad Max?
Yeah, it's Charlize Theron's character with the missing arm and
the
backstory, which is all about like...
Honestly, don't remember.
I
just...
Well, she doesn't... Like, the Mad Max
she's
Fury
the
Road
one that's running
not
away.
About
right?
her.
She leaves. She's
right.
like she's escaping, and she meets Max.
Correct. And Mad Max helps her free the enslaved women.
Gotcha.
I think that story of enslaved women might be too demanding for George Miller to tell in great depth.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Well, I'm sure they will be visually pleasing.
I think it'll be visually interesting. Although, I don't know if it because how much different is it going to be from the Mad Max Fury Road? That's my question, right? Because
I mean, all the Mad Maxes, I feel like, were kind of very similar anyways.
Well, Mad Max Fury Road, I thought, was a heightened version of the previous movies. It'd been 30 years since 35 years since the last one or something, and there was a lot more money behind it, a lot more technical craft behind it, and it was I thought pretty great in terms of visuals.
I just want to say that it seems like we don't like this movie so much that we are dedicating equal amount of time talking about other films and the film
better
we just
movies.
watched.
This is not the best movie he's ever made.
Here's the perfect analogy for this. It leaves you longing for a better film.
Yes.
He's made better films. This is clearly not his best work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're just gonna like, wow, I wish I watched another of his films, or not any of his films if you're me and you don't really like his films.
Watch Witches of Eastwick.
Okay, I haven't seen that one, so maybe...
I think it's fun.
Okay.
It's about a coven of witches who have really weird, horny sex with the devil, played by Jack Nicholson.
Okay. I'll check it out.
That's a really bad description of it, but that's what it is about as well.
I just want to say one thing before we get into our final thoughts. The only thing I read before watching this film was like a title of an article, I believe, that was saying that 3,000 Years of Longing is the adult version of Aladdin. And I was like, I hope that's not true. And it wasn't true. And I'm kind of still like, I don't know how that person watched it and then wrote an entire article called that.
It seems like a kind of racially motivated story.
Because I was like, this is... The only thing that's similar between them is that they both have a djinn or / genie.
Right.
But it's like, what?
So, like, and the original djinn comes from the Aladdin story. So, like...
And I just want to say, I love Aladdin. It's probably my favorite Disney film.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's a great one. Okay, well, Disney. I want to say...
the not the live action one, obviously.
No,
talking about the original animated one.
Yeah.
But even still, interesting.
It's a great one. I would say that Pixar and Disney, I'll keep them separate. I would say like Toy Story for sure is Pixar, and then
interesting choice again.
What?
I'm judging you so hard right now.
Why? Anyway, Aladdin's has perfect music, has a great story, great jokes that are still funny today. I think it's the only thing that's problematic about it is, a little sexist, and there's a little, there's definitely some issues with the story. But I think, for a Disney film, I think it's definitely great. So I think this film is nothing like it. I want to go watch Aladdin. I don't want to go watch this movie. So I would say my review is go watch Aladdin, the Disney
I would say the Disney
film.
animated Aladdin is a better movie than this. I would not have it as my personal favorite Disney animated movie.
We'll talk about that another time.
That'll be another episode.
Not to throw my ideas out there, then just cut yours down. But that might be an interesting,
we should fight about it.
Further episode of like a
one-off.
Yeah, like we argue about what's the best.
We could do like a ranking list.
Yeah,
like a tier list, like they do on YouTube.
Okay, of like Disney films specifically, or
sure.
or different things. Yeah, I'm down. That sounds cool. We can probably get into some fun debates. Yeah, write to us in the comments of this episode, or tweet at us at Film Cookbook if you'll be interested in hearing that. Anyways, let's jump into our final review. What is your concession impression?
What?
Your
concession impression?
Your concession impressions concession.
Oh, concession impressions concession. Okay. We need to find a better word for that.
Which concession would you rank this movie that you just watched?
So I think I would put it, it's not quite a Raisinette film for me. It's not that bad for me, but it's not a hot dog film either. Like it's too unsatisfying to be a hot dog film, but I think it's more a hot dog film than a Raisinette film. So I will, with our purposefully limited set of things to review it as, I would say it's a hot dog film.
Gotcha. I'm gonna just keep it simple. It's a Raisinette film. Now, I will say, I felt really bad thinking about this because personally, I don't want to give a film the worst score possible. I feel like everything tried, and I think there's a lot of good points of like, well, it should maybe at least be a hot dog film. But I think I need to draw a clear line of like, this is a Raisinette film, and I haven't never gave a Raisinette film yet. So I think in my mind, a Raisinette film for me is, would I go watch this again? The answer is no, probably never again. Yeah. I'll be willing to talk about it in a bad way. Mm-hmm. I mean, not in a bad way, but
I think if it's not worth your time, it's a Raisinettes film, right?
Yeah. I think it's not worth your time, and I think that's it. That's kind of what it comes down to.
Like with the Dragon Ball Z movie, because I'm not a fan of Dragon Ball, or not. It's not that I'm not a fan. I've not become a fan yet. It wasn't worth my time to see. So that's why I gave it a Raisinettes review. So for you, this wasn't worth your time. So
yeah,
it makes sense.
I'm sure people out there will probably give it a M&M or hot dog or something else. So, but
I feel like no one's gonna give it an M&M.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if anybody gave it a peanut M&M.
Let us know if you rank this as a peanut M&M movie.
Yeah, let's fight about it on Twitter. I love that.
Fight us. Okay, well, that's all for us today. I hope you enjoyed. This is our impressions on the film 3,000 Years of Longing. And yeah, next week we'll be dropping another episode of Filmmakers Cookbook. It's a great one. Go check it out. And we'll also be having another Concession Impression episode next week. So it'll be a double episode week. So
awesome.
So check them both out. It's gonna be great. So yeah, that's all I want to say. And anything you want to say, Chase? Last words?
Go rub some bottles.
Yeah, go rub some bottles. Cool. Well, on that note, everyone, see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Concession Impressions. The show is hosted and produced by Charles Helbeck and myself, Michelangelo White. Music in this episode was created by Joe Part. The show logo and editing was done by the wonderful Yumi White. I know we gave this film pretty terrible review. If you agree with us, let us know. If you disagree with us, I would definitely love to hear your thoughts. Tweet at us at Film Cookbook on Twitter and, drop us your thoughts. And we'll definitely listen and fight you or agree with you, depending on what you say. Anyways, that's all for this week. I will say that there's going to be a few updates. First of all, Monday, the 29th, we're going to be dropping a new episode of Filmmakers Cookbook. It's going to be coming out every 4 weeks on Monday. Concession Impressions will actually going to be moving from Friday to Saturday mornings. So next Saturday, we'll have another Concession Impression, and every 4 weeks on Monday, you'll be getting a new Filmmakers Cookbook. So please look out to those. Check them out. They're going to be great episodes, I promise. And see you then. Bye, everyone.